in the couch cushions for President Trump's tax plan. I come to this very openly because of my background. I'm a former CIA officer and Pentagon official. I did 3 tours in Iraq alongside the military. I spent my entire professional life before coming to elected office serving in sort of jobs that had me working on an hourly basis with the military. I served in the House and served on the Veterans Affairs Committee there and served on the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. And what I'm concerned about right now is that in this rush to cut everything for the sake of cutting, we're going to affect the very people that should be treated as nonpartisan, right? It shouldn't be a partisan issue to serve our veterans who have risked their lives, put themselves in danger, and come home with the express understanding that their nation owed them a debt. What we've seen so far is deeply disturbing, right? Secretary Collins, who's someone I served with in the House of Representatives, has already cut 2,400 employees from the VA. And now, look, everyone has the opportunity to go after waste, fraud, and abuse. I served in places like the Pentagon. If you would have come to me and said you need to cut 10% of your workforce, I could have come up with a plan that was targeted and thoughtful, but that cut out missions and organizations that probably didn't need to be there anymore. But that's not what this was. He can't say with a credible, straight face that those 2,400 people all were people that made sense, that weren't important to the mission of helping veterans. And we know that because people who were fired on a Friday were rehired on a Monday. And now we're facing the prospect of 70 to 80,000 additional people from the VA being cut across the country. That is the kind of cut that no mission to veterans can survive. And the VA is in a different position than a lot of our government agencies. The VA, unlike a lot of our government offices, just went through a moment where they're taking on more veterans for care. Just a couple of years ago, this body, on a bipartisan basis, Democrats and Republicans, voted on something called the PACT Act, which expanded coverage at the VA for our 9/11 era veterans, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Somalia. Anywhere we burned trash in a combat zone where people were inhaling that trash, we said, look, that experience is showing up with more cancers, more unusual cancers. We should give our 9/11 era veterans the benefit of the doubt of that care and not make them wait 40 years the way we did with the Vietnam veterans and Agent Orange. So this body voted on that, and we are going through a significant expansion of care to veterans because of that. Younger veterans, veterans with different needs, veterans who have PTSD and head trauma in addition to all the other things we know that they suffer, injuries seen and unseen. So when you start talking about cutting 70 to 80,000 people out of the VA, there is no way that you do that without cutting services. And here's the thing. I held a veterans town hall a couple of weeks ago in my home state. This is not a partisan event, right? These are people who are the heads of veteran service organizations. They do outreach to veterans. They're almost all veterans themselves. 95% of them are veterans themselves. And what they said was, look, we see that they're cutting people, for instance, who answer phones. And that may not seem like it's direct medical care to our veterans, but if a veteran has to file a claim to get a surgery, and instead of waiting a month to get approval, they have to wait 18 months to get approval, that is damaging veteran access to care. So it's not just what doctors are doing in the workplace, and we know that some healthcare professionals in our hospitals have been cut. It is also the wraparound services that our veterans get. So Secretary Collins was in Michigan, in Howell, Michigan, right in the center of my state, just in the past 10 days. That is a place, a county that has a tremendous number of veterans and a tremendous number of veteran service organizations. Just a really incredible county for supporting our veterans. And he was asked the direct question, like, okay, hey, you fired 2,400 people, but what about this leaked memo we heard about firing 70 to 80,000 people? Where do you stand on that? That can't be right. And he doubled down. He said, we're not going to lose any care. In fact, we're going to improve veteran health care, but we're going to cut 70 to 80,000 people. I just don't understand how the math on that works. I don't think anyone in that room understood how the math on that works, unless this is some big move to privatize the VA, something my Republican colleagues have wanted for a very long time. And I will tell you, I feel very strongly, as someone who has served in combat zones alongside the military, that there are some things that this nation should do, not through private contractors, not through private health insurance, not through whatever, but as a mission of the government, because when you volunteer to put yourself in harm's way, you make a commitment to the nation. So we should make that commitment back to you. So we are waiting to see what happens. And unfortunately, we are seeing the veterans on the ground in our states come forward and again come back into the fray, come back into the fight, come to town halls, ask tough questions. Again, these aren't political people. These aren't elected officials. These are people saying, hey, I fought 3 tours in Iraq or in Afghanistan, and now you're telling me there's not going to be anyone answering the phone at the suicide hotline or at the claims department. We're going to cut research. We're going to cut all these things. What are you doing to my care? Answer for that. So I think that we have to be aware of what is happening, and we have to hear the voices of our veterans as they're saying these things to me. I happen to be up at the Veterans Hospital up in Iron Mountain, Michigan, the UP of Michigan, the Upper Peninsula. It serves the entire Upper Peninsula, huge swath of territory. It serves a ton in Wisconsin and even into Minnesota. It's the only VA hospital around. And when I went there, the director of the hospital is walking us around, and he's saying, like, right now we're all right. But he has no idea what's on the horizon. He can't say for sure what's on the horizon. That kind of instability, that inability to plan, he wants to open a new specialty wing so that veterans can get specialized care when they come in. Should he open it? Should he not open it? Should he move forward? He doesn't know. So it's just creating an uncertainty around our medical centers, which are in some cases the only hospital around for 400, 500, 600 miles for our veterans to access. Now, the other thing that I'm completely concerned about is access to veteran data. What we're seeing through DOGE is a bunch of 20, 22-year-olds going into these departments and agencies, going over the heads of the cabinet officials, saying, we know that you were just confirmed by the Senate, but we don't care what you think. We're coming in. We're going to take all your programs, put them through a meat grinder with artificial intelligence to sort of look at key words and key things, and we're going to make decisions coming in over your head. And by the way, in some cases, we're going to bring in our own servers, literally carrying in servers, plunking them down in the agency, piping in all the plugs and getting all that data. We've already seen them at the Treasury get access to taxpayer data. We've already seen them through Medicare get access to healthcare information. Now I'm concerned, what are they going to do with veterans information, with active duty uniform military information, base information, spouse information? I think most Americans agree we don't want our data floating around on random servers that aren't protected from the national security threats that we know are after our data. Data is the future. Having data and huge amounts of data is absolutely essential for our foreign adversaries, for bad guys all over the world. They want that. Not to mention private sector companies, right? It's hard to miss that Mr. Musk and the Silicon Valley set that are now so close and doing the bidding of President Trump are deeply interested in that data. They can monetize that data and use that data to understand how to target you, what algorithms to use for you. So I've asked Secretary Collins and everyone else coming up here for confirmation, please affirm for me you will protect our veterans' data. They don't want it sold. They don't want it used. And I've gotten no assurances. They will not provide fitting assurances, or they provide assurances the way the Secretary of the Treasury did. Secretary Bessent came in for his confirmation hearing. He said, of course I won't let people get access to taxpayer data. And literally that week, DOGE got access to taxpayer data. So we now have a situation where even taking the word of the Secretary of the VA is hard to do given what's been going on in other departments and agencies. Now I want to make one additional comment before I wrap up and turn it over to our next speakers. I just want to note that just as we see the risks to our veterans, I'm also watching significant risks to our uniformed military and that desperate desire that I hope we all have to keep them apolitical. Early this morning, we learned about the dismissal of one of our senior-most generals in our national security community, General Haw, who was the head of the NSA and the Cyber Command. These are the people who keep us safe from cyber threats, who do our wiretaps on our adversaries abroad. These are folks who are critical in keeping us safe. As a CIA officer, I worked every single day with NSA. It was like a tag team. We would understand the intentions and goals of our adversaries, Chinese, Russians, North Koreans, Iranians, by getting that super classified information, that top secret information that only intelligence communities can pick up, and then turning that into a plan to protect the country, and then in some cases go offensive, right? Just like our enemies are going against us. We have very sensitive information and operations that go against our adversaries. General Haw is deeply respected. He served in the military for more than 30 years. He's a good man of dignity and was basically fired for no reason. From what we can understand, a white nationalist walked into Donald Trump's office, a woman who is well-known conspiracy theorist. She just fingered certain people she thought should go, including 2- and 3-star generals, and the next day they're gone. And I want to say that why I've heard the general brief the Senate Armed Services Committee, the House Armed Services Committee many, many times. He's had some of our most sensitive assignments in the entire military. What concerns me is this has become a new norm. This is going to become normal. They're going to say, well, he's tainted, so we're going to take someone who served more than any of those people sitting around in the Oval Office, and we're going to kick them out. And we're going to say, we don't like the looks of you, and we're going to say that service means nothing to your country. That while we know that the military swears an oath to the Constitution, not to any one political party or any one leader, we don't believe them, right? We believe ourselves and our conspiracy theorists more than the decency and service record of a respected general. So while I apologize to him and to the other leaders in his department who are now dealing with that absence, we have a hearing next week with that leadership. I wonder if that hearing can go forward to tell us about the most pressing threats, a classified hearing. What I'm most worried about is the signal it sends for so many other uniformed officers serving their country. They signed up to serve, and they're being treated like trash. They're being treated like a piece of political trash because of conspiracy theorists that have a greater influence on this president than the men and women who serve every day. It's a shame on the heads of this president, on the Secretary of Defense for letting it happen, and I can't let a day go by without marking this time and space. What is the next general that's going to be fired? What is the next mission that's going to be thrown out simply because someone looked at it the wrong way? That's the moment we're in. I'm shocked that my Republican colleagues, who have always claimed themselves to be pro-defense, pro-patriot, pro-America, pro-flag, then stand up for people who served 30 years and don't let them go down in flames because you're scared of the spotlight being put on you. You're scared of that man. So many actions that are happening on the floor of the Senate these days are sheer out of fear, right? There's very few true believers. They're terrified of being primaried. They're terrified of someone turning against them. Stand up for at least the U.S. military. Every single person in this chamber has lived a good and decent life. They haven't had bombs going off. They haven't had missiles flying into our country every single day, the way war-distraught towns and cities in other countries live through. We do that on the grace of our military, and they're being treated like trash by Donald Trump, by everyone in this chamber who doesn't stand up. And while we're talking about veterans, I can't escape the notice of what's going on in our uniformed active duty military, the soon-to-be veterans. Thank you, and I yield back.
President.
Senator from Minnesota.
Madam President, I rise proud to follow my colleague from Michigan, who has, of course, served herself, and then also proud to be here with Senator Rosen of Nevada, so many veterans in Nevada. And we rise today to urge our colleagues to